One of the big principles in the SROMP, and actually it is not just for the SROMP, it's for all the practice we are doing, is the principle of micro variations. You can phrase the principle like this. To create a much higher diversity in your movement and thus have a wider repertoire, which creates more freedom, probably more health, do micro variations. What is a micro variation? A micro variation is to change small things, not the whole exercise, but just things within the pattern, within the basic idea of what's moving. Have a look. For example, this rotation in the shoulders. Yeah? Backwards rotation in the shoulders. Instead of just doing it the whole time like this, my whole life in this way, I can have a lot of different variations, micro variations. For example, what I'm now doing is placing the arms into different positions in space and thus changing always the angle in the shoulders. Yeah, how the upper arm is in the shoulder. Okay, so this is one micro variation I can do here, and I can actually, it's like hundreds of micro variations because I can put my arms into all sorts of angles. What can I also do? I can have different degrees of internal and external rotation while doing it. More externally rotated, internally rotated, everything in between. I can have my elbows bent while doing it. I can do it bend forward, yeah, or backwards or to the side. I can do it in a squat variation or sitting down. All a bit different because everything is connected. Yeah, so when I go into a sitting position compared to a standing position, it will have an effect also on the movement. That is not extremely big, that's why it's called micro variation. But to do it in all sorts of different ways makes sense because, as I already said, this diversification of what you're doing is providing freedom of movement. You're widening your repertoire and you can do lots of different things. And at the same time, diversity of movement is what's clearly lacking in most people's life, and this is why their movement ability is deteriorating more and more and more, and they start to have more pains and so on and so forth. So that's such an important principle in the SROMP, that I show the movements mostly like the basic variation, and from this basic variation I want you to play around with it and to stay very active in finding micro variations. This will also make sure you stay awake and aware, and this is not just a program where you basically fall asleep doing like 30 reps of this, yeah, and then 30 reps of this, which is very, very robotic. I want you to stay awake the whole time when you practice the SROMP. Not go into a robotic mode, but stay very explorative. Stay an explorer of what you can do, the different variations and micro variations, and thus creating a very clear map. But that's the effort that you have to put in to stay awake and to do all sorts of micro variations instead of just doing always the basic variation. So remind yourself of this very, very regularly. Do micro variations. Start in the SROMP and then you let it also go into other practices. Strength, stretching, balance training, and so on and so forth. They all benefit from micro variations. All right.